Now, World Autism Awareness Day is an internationally recognized day on April 2nd every year, encouraging member states of the United Nations to take measures to raise awareness about people with autistic spectrum disorders, including autism and Asperger's syndrome, throughout the world. Joining us now is Daisy Jonathan, a qualified autism service practitioner, a supervisor with vast knowledge and experience in planning and addressing the individual needs of people with autism. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much, Akene.
Great to have you.
Thank you, this one.
I think we should start from the beginning. What is autism? For those watching who don't know, maybe they haven't come across anyone with autism, maybe they've heard about it, they've watched the movie Rain Man. Help us make sense of what autism really is.
Okay, first and foremost, it's good to know that autism is an entire spectrum of disorders. We like to say disorders because it's actually has to do with a lot of different disorders that have been put together into what's now called autism spectrum disorders. Before now, we would have Asperger's, would have PDD-NOS and Rett's and all of that, but we've put all that together. Now, for a diagnosis of autism to be made, we must have impairments in 3 areas, and that's in the area of social communication skills. We must have some repetitive and stereotypical behaviors. And of course, we must have, the children having issues with ability to communicate. And people often would say communication is speech. So it's not about them having issues with speaking, but actually having issues with communicating as effectively as would expect for the regular population.
So would you say there's enough understanding of what autism is in Nigeria? And what shocks you the most when, you're a professional in this field, when you see parents raising a child with this developmental disability, what shocks you the most in a society like ours? And what's the understanding level like?
Our understanding is quite low. It's still quite low. Mm-hmm. We have, over the years, practitioners, parents like me and professionals have tried to bridge the gap as has to do with awareness. Mm-hmm. However, we still have a lot of challenges with diagnosis and what we call differential diagnosis, because a lot of things are just boxed together and thrown in to say this is autism. So we have, people who would normally qualify for other diagnosis being put under the whole umbrella of autism. And because it's an entire spectrum of, from mild to severe, you're not so sure what exactly is autism and what is not autism. And it becomes a lot more confusing and complex for us as parents and also as practitioners when autism doesn't really just walk alone every time. So sometimes you have what we call comorbid disorders, which are disorders that occur, side by side with autism. So you would see people have ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and they would say this is autism. Or you have somebody have Prader-Willi syndrome, which is a genetic disorder, and say this is autism. So everything is, is all packed together under the umbrella term autism spectrum disorder in Nigeria currently. So one of the things we're talking about is medical practitioners, pediatricians have to be trained to be able to diagnose properly, not just by looking at people and saying, okay, because these are there, then this is autism. Because autism does mimic quite a lot of other disorders. So we would prefer that, as awareness is increasing, we also have skills increasing. Not just skills in terms of being able to teach, which is what we do, but even being able to diagnose, because it makes a whole lot of difference. If we do know what is autism and what is not autism, then we know how to, address, the factors that come up or the issues that come up with autism itself.
So what shocks you the most? Because I know when it comes to disability in Nigeria, there's the likelihood to relate this to spirituality, to myths, to witchcraft, whatever you want to call it. But so what shocks you the most in this space when it comes to autism?
What have you heard anymore? I don't get shocked anymore. I was saying on my way here that I've heard it all. We've heard, it only happens to people who are wealthy, the middle class. But autism affects all classes, from the, those in the lower class, the upper class, and the middle class. So it's there. But what still shocks me is the fact that this is the 21st century, we still have parents who do not understand what is going on with their children. Again, it goes back to diagnosis, if they were diagnosed properly, and if they were carried along. Because, as a parent myself, before I became a professional, I was just handed a diagnosis. I was just told that this is autism, but what it entails, most parents still don't know. So that's shocking. It's shocking that our medical professionals still don't know enough. So you take a child on the spectrum to the hospital and they say, Madam, hold your child. This child is, what is wrong with your child? And you should tell me. I mean, you are the one that is supposed to tell me what, you're the expert. So it's still shocking. It's still shocking that even amongst people who are educated, we still have a lot of myths and misconceptions. So people still think that, oh, this child is being stubborn. Oh, this child is just spoiled. You didn't train him well. You should give him some lashes, some good beating, and then the child would wake up. I still hear that. I still hear people, quite educated people, looking out for a cure and looking, well, we're not saying it's not a possibility in the future, but currently there's no cure. But then we still have a lot of snake oil remedies. So it's still quite surprising. Each time I get to hear of one miracle cure, there's something out there that is curing, and then we have to go buy it, So it's still, it's such a lot of, different things.
Now I understand why you're no longer shocked.
She's come across a gamut of
so a lot of things.
Okay, let's look at overcoming stigma, because as a parent yourself, you must have met some of these things firsthand. And how did you build a wall around yourself and your family so that you could push past the stigma, which a lot of people must be struggling with in a society such as ours, where we prefer to pretend, and I imagine other societies as well, pretend that these things don't exist and maybe hide your child at home. What do you do to overcome that stigma?
The first cause, I always feel that stigma comes from ignorance. If you don't know enough, then you think, you're free to think whatever you want to think. So it's there. One of the first steps I would tell people is get educated. If you're a parent, if you're a teacher, anyone, if you're a minister in church and you have that one child in your community, school community, the church community, the mosque, the first thing is get information. As the more you know, the less you believe, of the things that just keeps flying. So the stigma is that people will still look. As a person, I've built that wall. You look, then that's fine. I really don't care anymore. But I've gotten to the point where each time I'm faced with stigma, with discrimination, it's for me, it's a teaching opportunity. It's a time for me to tell people what autism is and what autism is not. And I think that's what a lot of parents would need to do. We have to
become advocates.
Yeah, we have to become advocates. We have to be at the forefront. We have to teach people, because, I keep saying, if my son hadn't come into my life, maybe I wouldn't have even been an educator, or maybe I wouldn't have even been a practitioner. So the reason for who I am right now is because of my child. And I can't blame people who don't know enough unless I help them walk up the ladder of knowledge and getting to understand that these children are unique. These children, a lot of them are gifted. A lot of them actually do go through a lot of stress on their own, a lot of challenges on their own. So let's not always see them as children who are challenges to us. But let's see it from the point of view that it's not so easy to be different in a world that works one way, and then this is the way I process things, this is the way I behave, in a world that doesn't think that's the way it's supposed to be. So it's also not so easy for our children, and it's good that parents, practitioners, parents, teachers, everybody needs to understand that and help break the stigma as much as possible.
All hands on deck. I'm just looking at the message by the United Nations Secretary General for the day, Antonio Guterres, and he's talking about inclusive and accessible society for all, especially as the world begins to heal from COVID-19. So it's about recognition, it's about inclusion, and not self-pity.
Yeah, true.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.